This evening, we are delighted to have Nancy Feldot join us. Nancy lives in Massachusetts. As you can see there, she goes to Life Point Church. She's a Spark director, but she's also an educational therapist at Pioneer Valley Christian Academy in Springfield, Massachusetts. So it's so great to have her with us. You know, she works with kids with special needs every day of the week. She brings a wealth of knowledge and experience. And so I think that's going to be a great help to you, help to all of us get some great information and insights. In a minute, I'm going to turn it over to Nancy, and she can introduce herself and maybe tell you a little bit more about her. But I want to do some quick house cleaning items, if you will, housekeeping items. I'm going to mute everyone initially. That just helps us reduce the amount of background noise. I think with the group we are going to have some discussion time in the beginning. I think we're just going to keep us all together. Nancy's going to maybe have a scenario or two for you guys to think about and maybe share. And not all of you have to, but if you'd like to share, all you have to do is just simply unmute yourself. And you can do that by moving your arrow down to the bottom of the screen, bottom left, and you should see a mute or a microphone button. You can just unmute, and then you'll be able to share or ask your questions. There is a chat button as well down there that you can see. If you click on chat, that'll open a group chat box. That's a place where you can ask questions. We will do our very best. So as Nancy's presenting and you have a question pop up you want to make sure is addressed tonight while we have Nancy with us, go ahead and type that question in, and we'll be monitoring that, and we'll make sure we'll do our very, very best to get all of your questions answered this evening. So take advantage of the chat box, and we just look forward to a great time of learning this evening. So with that, let me pray, and then I'll turn this over to Nancy. Father, we thank you, Lord, for this night. We thank you for the technology that allows us to do this type of training. God, I thank you for each one of these leaders, these kids ministry leaders who are serving each week in Awana. God, I thank you for their ministry. I thank you for their heart for children, Lord. And thank you that you're bringing the children that we have, that we can minister to each and every week. And help us tonight just learn more about some children have some special needs. Lord, all children are precious to you, and we want to be to minister with to all of them, share the gospel, and just engage them in lifelong discipleship. So thank you for the privilege that we have to do this. And God, I just pray for Nancy as she shares with us this evening. And I pray these things in your name. Amen. Nancy, I'm going to unmute you, and you should be unmuted. And,
okay.
And why don't you go ahead? I'm going to turn this over to you. Maybe introduce yourself, and then just jump right into what you have to share with us this evening.
All right. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate your invitation to speak to your people. As Mike said, I'm a Sparks director. My husband and I have been in kids ministry since 1971. So we've been around for a while. This is 31 years for us in Awana. I love my Sparkies. They're my shot in the arm in the middle of the week after dealing with teenagers for the most part all week long at school. I was a preschool teacher for over 20 years. Then I got my master's degree, moved into middle school, and I was there for 23 years. And then I retired and went right back to work as an educational therapist. So I work specifically with kids who have specific learning disabilities, whether it's ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, there's a whole host. But that's the student population that I work with at school. Currently, I have students in grades 7 through 11. And I've become a little bit passionate about making sure that all of our kids receive the best that they can, whether it's at school or in a church setting. I have no idea about the size of your clubs, the number of kids that you work with. Um, Last night I had 33 Sparkies in a not very big area, and I would say at least 6 of them are on somewhere on the scale of ADHD. So I'm in the trenches right along with the rest of you. And it can be frustrating if you don't have a clear idea of what ADHD is. Um, I'm not the expert, and there is no one size fits all because the kids come with their own personalities as as a host of other things. But I can give you some ideas, some of the clinical information, but also some of the ideas that we have used that we have found to be successful with these kids. And as Mike said, if you have a question, you want to put it into the chat box or whatever, I would love to make this as personal as possible for you. I think the one thing I want to repeat over and over again is these kids are going to respond much better when they know that you care about them, not just the behavior. Unfortunately, with the kids with the hyperactivity component of ADHD, it's the behavior that jumps out at us most of the time. There's the 10-90 principle. 10% of what happens to us is beyond our control. The remaining 90% of life consists of how we react to what happens to us. And we're in control of that 90%. And that includes the way we react to the kids. It's the pebbles in a pond, that ripple effect, that one thing that you do, that one positive word that you can give to a kid who is driving you crazy at that moment. But yet you can look beyond the behavior and see the child. That little bit of kindness can make such a difference down the road. I had a 6-foot tall kid in my office at 8 o'clock this morning. He walked in and said, I didn't get anything done last night. And my first reaction was, I have an hour and a half to work with you. And you didn't bring anything that you were supposed to work on. And then the tears started to come down his face. You don't understand. My mom's in the hospital. We had to take her to the hospital last night. I had to make sure that anything I was thinking of at that point went out the door. Because that boy was more important than any behavior, whether it was not doing his work or whatever. So we talked, and he shared, and he cried. And that's the only place in the building that he will cry. But he needed to have that opportunity. And yes, he drives me crazy a good part of the time. Attention deficit disorder with or without hyperactivity is the official terminology that's being used now. And the definitions and the terminology and the connections change with regularity. But right now, this is the definition that's being used. There is no definitive diagnosis for it. You can't take a blood test for it. It's more of a checklist, and the doctors will look at all the different types of behaviors the child is exhibiting and come up with, yes, he qualifies as having ADHD. In Massachusetts, ADHD qualifies as a health reason for a child having a 504 plan or an accommodations plan in school. I don't know how it is in the other states, but in Massachusetts, and I believe in Connecticut as well, that diagnosis is enough to say, yes, the child can have a 504 plan, and those accommodations have to be given so that the child is able to access as much of the general education as possible. While it might not have a specific diagnosis, It is real. One of my students told me that he hears music in his head all the time, so he sings along with it. He was a teenager before he realized that not everybody hears music in their heads. Um, he figured everyone did, but obviously he's one of a few. Uh, we're going to take a look, first of all, at some of the behaviors we'll see in kids who have the hyperactivity component. And then we're going to take a break for the chat time, the chat room time. And after that, we'll come back and we'll look at some of the things that we can see for those who have the who don't have the hyperactivity component to ADHD. So oftentimes the child is going to be on the go all the time, as though he's driven by a motor. Or as I said to one boy, it's like you have a spring that's all wound up really tight, and it can't stop until all of the spring is let loose. And he looked at me and said, "Yup, that's me." And he gets it. He knows he has to work through that. Kids might be fidgeting most of the time, or there could be the impulsivity issue where there's no filter. When they want something, they want it now. Wanting to be first, intruding on other people's conversations, sometimes we see that as the child's being rude. But oftentimes these kids really don't have the ability to stop that. They don't even see that they're intruding. They might not hear that someone else is already talking. They blurt out answers or comments or questions without waiting to be called on. It's as though the thought comes to the mind, it's out of the mouth. They can't wait their turn. And some kids will have a meltdown because they don't get to be first. And that's another issue that we have to deal with, especially with the younger ones. Pushing other kids out of the way because the impulsivity is in the forefront. They want to be first. They're afraid they're going to miss something. And these behaviors can be annoying to us, but they're going to respond much better when they know you care about them, not just about the behavior. And looking past the behavior is a challenge. These kids may seem that they have no self-control, and oftentimes that's true. Those are skills and strategies that they will have to learn, and it's not a quick fix. They can't seem to stop a particular action or behavior. They have to see it through, whether it's lining up their Matchbox cars just so, putting their crayons away in just a certain order. Once they get started on something, they have a need to finish it through in the way they had planned on. They may have difficulty seeing how their behavior affects others, especially for kids on the younger end. Their mind goes in so many directions at the same time. My oldest son, who is now 51 and pastor of a church, was ADHD before they ever called it ADHD. And he drove his teachers crazy. He'd be talking or fooling around all the time, and the teachers would be sure he wasn't paying attention. And they'd call him and, "All right, Benjamin, you answer it." And he'd be able to give them the right answer every single time, because his mind could go in more than one direction at a time, and he actually could absorb what was going on. We worked very hard to have him learn to control his impulses, because that was one of his biggest issues. And thankfully, after 3 years of intense work, he was pretty much able to control the impulses. The ADHD will affect the child's ability to really listen or focus for a long time. That doesn't mean that they can't be totally absorbed in something. They can if it's something they're really interested. Legos or a video game or whatever, they could be totally interested in that, but everything else is tuned out. Can't wait their turn. Did that one. They desperately want attention, or at least it seems like it. And honestly, these kids can wear you out. I understand that, and especially when we're in a setting that can be a lot less structured than a classroom setting. In a classroom setting, the teacher has usually has the child for a longer period of time, and it's during the day when the child is more alert, able to listen and focus a little bit better. We usually get the kids in the evening. You know, our club is Wednesday night. Others I know have them on Friday nights or whatever. But still, it's at the end of the school day and the kids are more tired. They're tired, you're tired. And by the end of the night, you're really tired because they can wear you out. And we need to be able to see the child, not just the behavior. That doesn't mean we ignore the behavior. What I'd like you to do for the next 4 or 5 minutes, I want you to think about those characteristics that we just talked about, and I've got them up on the screen here a little bit smaller. And I want you to think about which 2 to 3 are the most likely to cause a negative reaction from you. Even if the reaction is simply internal, you wouldn't say it out loud, but inside there's that reaction. And think about why you would react most strongly to those behaviors or characteristics.
Hey, Nancy, I think what I'm going to do is we're going to leave everybody here.
Okay.
We're going to have them think about this for a minute. And then folks, as you want to share, just unmute yourself and just share that thing that may stick out to you, like, whoa, yeah, that one, you know, that I react to that. And so let's just have a time. If something pops up, you want to share that, please do that. Nancy, I'm going to well, I'll leave this up for a minute, but I can unshare your screen and then we can see everybody.
Okay.
Or just keep it up. Okay, we'll just keep it up. We'll leave it up. And then, so as anybody wants to share something after they've had a chance to look, just go ahead and unmute and share.
For me, I think it's waiting to be first and blurting out answers.
I'm sorry, the wanting to be first?
Out answers.
Oh, yeah, that can be aggravating. Okay. Anybody else? Hello? Kathleen, I could see that you were saying something, but I couldn't hear you. Oh, typing? Okay.
All right, we'll look for her question on the chat.
Okay.
Or her comment.
Okay.
Anybody else like to? Love to hear.
Hello. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, mine would be pushing others out of the way because it actually involves other kids and could harm them in some way.
Okay. And when that happens, how do you respond?
Oh, well, I usually what we do is we just tell them they have to take their turn and talk to them about that. I don't let them go ahead and just do what they want to do because they need to be told. You know, I do it in a nice way, but do it in a way that, you know, because the other ones will be, well, he gets his way every time and he gets to do this and that. So you can't do that. So what I do basically is just talk to him and explain that, you know, that he or she will get their turn, but they have to wait like the rest. And it is hard for them.
It is.
Yeah,
and then they're going to be expending all of their energy to wait at that point.
I usually have a helper in my room with me, and they will usually step up because they are a teacher also, and they will talk to them and try to occupy them and stuff and everything while they're waiting. So that helps.
That's a good idea, to occupy them or distract them while they're waiting. Yeah. What age group are you working with?
I work from like 1st grade to 5th.
Okay.
Or kindergarten, basically, to 5th grade.
Okay.
And they're very impulsive at that age anyway.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it gets better when they're teenagers.
They learn to deal with it a little bit more when they become a little bit older, but they have to learn, you know, and modify their behavior. And you just got to help them, guide them through it.
Right. So. Okay. Did we get the question from Kathleen?
Yes, Kathleen said, difficulty with behaviors affecting others and impulsivity. It can set off the whole class.
You're right. Kathleen, are you the one who emailed me? And you work with cubbies, right? Okay. And you are so right. All it takes is one child in cubbies to get wound up, and then there are at least 4 or 5 more going at the same time, depending on how many kids you have in a group. And that is something that 3 and 4-year-olds really don't have that much control anyway over their focus doesn't last for very long. They are definitely very me-centered. They believe, they might not say it, but they really do see the world as revolving around them, and they don't always understand how their actions are affecting someone else. If it doesn't hurt them, they're not exactly sure why somebody else should feel hurt by it. And that's part of what we have to do in teaching them. Okay, so I've got some, and I do have some things to add for what you were, you emailed me about before too. Does anybody else have another one that they want to throw out here that really gets to them?
Yeah, we have Jen. Jen had a comment she wanted to make.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, Nancy. So the one that really gets to me a lot is just having difficulty seeing how their behavior affects others. It comes off a lot as selfish, and I don't know if it's because I'm a mom of younger kids and I'm daily preaching to them about loving others more than themselves, you know, but I think it just, for me, it just comes off as selfish and just, you know, why are you so not aware of your surroundings kind of thing.
And what age group are you working with?
We get my husband and I are the commanders, so we get a little bit of all the ages.
Okay. So do you end up dealing with some of the discipline issues?
Every now and again, yeah. Not too often though.
Okay. So the child with ADHD who doesn't stop to think how his behaviors are affecting someone else, especially on the younger end, I would say 9 and under, they really do have a difficult time slowing their brains down enough to realize what their action is, the consequence of the action, or even the next step of the action. Never mind how somebody else is going to see it. So we have to do part of the educating then, and taking them aside and saying, okay, here's what I saw you do. Yeah, can you tell me what you were thinking? And an 8 or 9-year-old can probably tell you, even a 7-year-old, and some 5s and 6s as well. But they might just say, I don't know. And that's not a lie. They might not know what they were thinking because the thought wasn't there long enough. It came into their brain and immediately it triggered an action. And that, yes, that's frustrating. And I don't think we can get angry with them for not being able to see how their behavior affects someone else. It's not something that we're going to fix in the amount of time that we have with the kids. Usually the teachers are working on this at school. They might be even in pull-out sessions for to work on social behaviors. There could be counseling involved for these kids. But we have to do our part, and honestly, asking the parents, what do you do at home? What are they doing in school? When this happens in school, what terms, what words do the teachers use? It's really good to have everybody on the same page with that. Mm-hmm. Okay. And yes, it's frustrating, but they're not little adults. They're little kids, and there's a neurological issue going on in their brain that prohibits them at this point until the brain has a chance to mature. And some people still deal with ADHD into adulthood. Okay. Any other questions?
Nancy, we have 2 more that we want to deal with quickly. And
okay.
Come through tight. One I have here is that she is most challenged by the on the go, constantly running around, won't sit. Okay, that's hers. That is from Lisa.
Okay. All right, Lisa, running around on the go. Oh my. And I guess it depends on your age group. And that's one of the things that I'm going to be talking about in a couple of minutes, because these kids have a very difficult time sitting still. Their attention span is shorter than the average child that age or the typical child that age. So sometimes we have to give them a place where they can move, and to expect the child to sit still and focus, and they can, but that's all they're going to be getting out of it. All of the attention will be going into, I have to sit still. So we have to work into it, some movement. Some kids take it to the excess where it's constant movement. Usually that's with the younger children, the running around part anyway.
Nancy, she has sparks she's talking about specifically.
Okay, Sparkies. If a child is running around the whole time during handbook time, and he's even in kindergarten, that's not typical even for an ADHD child. There could be something else going on. And without knowing the child specifically, I'm going to give you some ideas in a couple of minutes on some calming down techniques that you can use. That might be something that would be helpful. Okay, I've got a few of them that we're going to talk about. Okay, so hopefully I'm going to give you a little bit more help in a couple of minutes. And you had another one, Mike?
Just one here real quick. We'll do this one and then go on to the next subject. I have a hyper little boy and a wanderer, mostly nonverbal one. hard to keep them corralled. We are trying to have someone one-on-one with the wanderer. This is a Sparks kindergarten.
Nonverbal kindergartner, that's a lot more than ADHD. Likely there's apraxia, aphasia, or the autism spectrum. So there's a lot more going on there than just ADHD. If the child is a wanderer, you better have somebody one-on-one with them. You don't want to lose a child, and because that's scary. Okay. Are we ready to go on, Mike?
Yes, yes. Thanks, Nancy.
Okay. All right. Let's see what we've got next. We'll just take a minute or so with the for the behaviors of the kids who have ADHD, but it's the non-hyperactivity. These are the ones that can kind of blend into the woodwork. They're quiet, but they're not necessarily really paying attention. They can be very forgetful. Daydreaming, they don't seem to hear everything that you say. Surprisingly, these kids can be argumentative at times as well. They lose their focus easily. There can be a sadness or a depression that comes along with that part. These kids desperately want attention too, but they get lost in their own little world. It is a form of ADHD. It's without the hyperactivity component. These kids probably aren't going to cause you much trouble in your club night, except that they might not hear you when you tell them, okay, it's time to go to large group time or game time. You might have to repeat directions more than once, more than twice. Both types of ADHD often affect executive functioning. And this is that frontal part of the brain where the sense of time is, being able to organize things. And ADHD has a big effect on the executive functioning. They may lack the ability to sequence next, then, last, first. They may have difficulty remembering or understanding directions. If you give them 3 directions, they'll probably get first and last, or first or last, but they're not going to get all 3. A struggle to know left from right. They lose things in just a couple of minutes. They had their handbook, it was in their hand, and in a minute it's gone, and they have no clue where it is. It just disappears. They forget to bring the book or the uniform. Oftentimes these kids are unfocused, and they will also, that's when they blurt out something that has totally nothing to do with the lesson you're teaching or what you were actually doing at that point. You could be giving a Bible lesson on the Good Samaritan, and you've got somebody blurting out about a bluebird because they saw something blue and they thought about a bluebird, and they blurted out. So the executive functioning is something that really affects them at school, but it will affect them as well in game time, following directions, remembering the directions. The same thing when you're in handbook time, keeping track of their things, knowing where they are. But here's the big thing. ADHD rarely shows up alone. And that's a whole different workshop, but oftentimes the child with ADHD is going to have at least one other issue going on, whether it's a specific learning disability, anxiety disorder, depression, the autism spectrum disorder, sensory processing disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, or any one of a number of other things. It's rare that I have found that ADHD shows up just as that, and there's nothing else going on as well. So you have a child with ADHD, but underneath it, there's a whole lot of anxiety because there's that fearfulness that he's forgetting something, that he's going to get in trouble. He's been yelled at so many times as it is. So that feeds the anxiety. But underneath that could be a real anxiety disorder that can create all kinds of other behaviors as well. This is where it's so important to talk to the parents. It's not, we had a brand new child last night in Cubbies, 4.5. Not exactly nonverbal, would repeat certain words, but mostly it was no being screamed at the leaders. And I think we only had 15 in Cubbies last night. But you add a new child in, running around, and the Cubbies director called for me to come and help. She said, I need help. I don't know what to do. And I watched the child for 3 minutes. And in that 3 minutes, she had to be taken away from the water fountain 4 times. And each time when she was told, no, you have to stay here, she yelled, no. And she went back to where she was told to go because she was led back. And within a few seconds, she was right back again. There's a lot more going on. It's not just the running around. There's a whole lot more going on with that child. And the director wisely followed up with the parents afterwards to get some information. That parent never should have dropped the child off without explaining what was going on. But the dad stayed and shared some things afterwards. And the leader knew to ask, what do you do at home? What words do you use? What sets her off? So that they have an idea for next time how they can help her. Obviously, as I said, there's something a lot more than just ADHD going on with this child. The nonverbal part points to that. All right, here are some general techniques for reining the whole class in, the whole group of them. And this works Cubbies up through T&T. I've used it in middle school and high school as well. The old 1, 2, 3 magic. That's 1, that's 2, that's 3. The kids know by the time I get to 3, because we practice it a whole lot, that by 3, they're quiet, their eyes are on me. That works with an individual as well. One of the 5-year-old kindergartner running around the room, and you call the child's name. Always use the name first so that you get their attention. Johnny, that's 1. Johnny, that's 2. Johnny, that's 3. He needs to know what you expect him to do. He also needs to know that when you get to 3, he better have stopped running around, or it's going to be a little talk outside the room, or he's going to come and sit with you for a few minutes, depending on what you've set up as strategies to use with him. Counting backwards from 5 down to 1. If you start counting and you're not doing 1, 2, 3 magic, and you count up, the kids don't know when you're going to end. But if you're counting backwards, they know you're stopping at 1. They know just how much time they have to rein themselves in, and they can't do it in a split second. Most of us as adults have a hard time doing that. The one that I have found works best with my Sparkies, and it works with Cubbies, is to clap in rhythm. This is for a whole group, and I had, out of my 33 last night, at least 6 with diagnosed ADHD and other issues. Just clapping in a rhythm. And they know when I start, they're going to do the same thing. And I don't say a word, and they just start clapping. And pretty soon they're looking around and they realize, oh, everybody's clapping. They start clapping too. It might take a few seconds longer, but I haven't humiliated anyone. They've had a chance to make some noise with permission. They've had a chance to get a little bit of the energy out of them, and they know that their eyes are on me and they're ready for what happens next. Okay? We do it in game time. And I'll just start clapping. Our game leaders do it now as well in game time. Start clapping, and the kids respond, and they're quiet and they're ready to listen. It's a little bit of fun. Do I have to use it more than once a night in large group time? Occasionally. I'll do it right at the very beginning. And then there are times when I'll have to do it again. But it gives them a chance to move. It gives them a chance to make some noise. And most of the kids end up smiling while they're doing it because it's fun to do. The worst thing you can do is lose your cool and raise your voice. That's only going to make things worse. I learned a hugely important lesson from my oldest son's kindergarten teacher. As I said, my oldest son had ADHD. He was known as the church brat. He was a stinker. And I knew that he could give any teacher a hard time. So when I went in to talk to the teacher, I wanted to make sure that Benjamin was behaving himself. And she said, "Oh, I've got him figured out. No problem." She says, "I never yell at the kids. I whisper in the ear." So she would get up and Ben would be acting up and she would just go over, whisper in his ear. Every little kid wants to hear a secret. And so they stop what they're doing so they can hear what the teacher is whispering in the ear. And it can be something as simple as, "Benjamin, you need to settle down. Benjamin, you ran right around that table." It's enough to get them to stop what they were doing, to break the train of thought, and to redirect it. Is it harder than yelling? For you, maybe. You've got to get up and move to where the child is. In the long run, it's a lot easier because when you yell, you're letting the kid know that you care about his behavior, not about him. The only time I would yell is if it was a safety issue. If the child is getting ready to run out of the building or going to run into something that would be a danger, then I would yell. Other than that, no. Give a warning before changing gears. These kids struggle with transition. And Kathleen, I know that was one of the things that you had mentioned for your cubbies. They do struggle with transition. That's why you give them a warning, but keep to a routine as much as possible so that they know whether it's you have a certain signal that you use every single time when you're going to go, you have 5 more minutes of playtime before you're going to move to something else. Or it's 5 more minutes of small group time and then we're going to go to game time. Having the routine, and they know when they hear that, whether it's a song, a clap, some kind of a signal that they know. Even if you just say to them, give a quick clap, 5-minute warning, guys, 5 minutes, and then we're going to move to, or 5 minutes, and then we're going to put away these things. I had to do that in my middle school classroom. 5 minutes, guys, and then you have to be ready to turn in the test or whatever. It makes sense to give a little bit of a warning. This works with a child or with the whole group. And there's nothing wrong with going to the child and saying, "Hey, Joe, we've got 5 more minutes." Okay? You give it to the whole group, but then you have the child's leader say, "Hey, Joey, did you hear? We only have 5 more minutes. Then we're going to move to the next thing." And that's telling the child you care about him, not just about the behavior. Some general things. allow the kid to move around. It might mean that you give the child a job to do. If they can't sit still for 30 minutes or 40 minutes, whatever you have for large group time, make some arrangements. Make sure that the program itself has up and down and movement, chance to talk, that it's kid-centered, not just adult-centered. Younger kids, you're lucky to get them sitting still for 5 minutes and really paying attention. Be specific and positive about what you want the child to do, not be good, because he has his own ideas about what good is. But Joey, it's time to listen to Mr. Jones. Or Joey, we've got to calm down. 2 deep breaths. And I've used that with my kids, and it can be very quick. Just saying, okay, guys, take 2 deep breaths. 1 in, out, in, out. Phew. It gets oxygen to the brain, as well as giving them something to do, and it gives you a chance to redirect them and refocus as well. If you have to have any further conversations with the kid, try to do it away from the rest of the group. Enough negative stuff gets said to and about the child. They end up with bad self-image. But if you can pull them away and just have a minute to talk with them, have a prearranged signal, whether it's a snap of the fingers, just walking by and a tap on the shoulder, as long as the kid is okay with a touch like that. Not every kid is. Sometimes you have to get down eyeball to eyeball and say the kid's name first, have them look you in the eye. They don't always want to look you in the eye, and that can be a problem. Make eye contact. A child on the autism spectrum may not be able to do that. A typical child with ADHD should be able to look you in the eye, but they're going to look away. I'm not sure sometimes if they think you're actually seeing into their souls when you look into their eyes, or they're afraid they're going to give away too much, or afraid they're going to have to own up to their misbehavior. I've got one little guy I've been working with for 3 years, trying to get him, look at me. Here's what I want you to do. He'll look at me and immediately the eyes look away again. And I'll have him look back at me a couple times, but I won't keep forcing it, as long as I know that he's listening to me. And then I ask him to tell me in his own words, what is it that I want him to do? Tell me in your own words, what do I want you to do? What are you going to do when you go back into the room? Just having him say it, not me. I know what I want him to do. I want him to be able to put it into his own words, because sometimes that can be a self-fulfilling prophecy too, in a good way. And I think last, do the kid a favor and buddy him up with a compassionate adult, not somebody who thinks the child has to sit up straight all the time, hands folded in his lap, be a perfect little angel, because he's not going to do that. None of us are ever like that. But some adults have unrealistic expectations of kids. Buddy him up with somebody who is compassionate, and be prepared to give directions more than once, because he's not going to hear them all the first time. For an individual calming down, when that little one that's been running around, and you might feel like you have to chase him to catch him, but that will excite him a whole lot more than just standing. And as he comes around again, stand and say, okay, come on, let's go. If he's running around that much, you're going to have to take him outside the room if he won't settle down. The whisper technique, a soft touch on the shoulder sometimes, as long as the kid is okay with that, but not all kids want to be touched. It might make them, that set them off even more. Because you don't know what goes on at home with the child, so make sure it's okay that you put a hand on the shoulder. And never put a hand anywhere else other than on his shoulder. Don't grab the kid by the arm and say, you're going to stand still, but just that touch. Um, when you talk to him, make sure that he has a plan to settle down. The breathing is a good place to at least start. And that can really help enough for him to listen to you. Because when he goes back into the room, he has to know what he's going to do and how he's going to be able to make sure that he does it. And maybe that means that he knows he can look at you and you're going to give him a thumbs up. Gotcha, you're doing it right. Or the thumbs up, I've got your back. I'm here to help. I'm not here to get you. I'm here to help. Please make accommodations so that he doesn't feel like he's constantly being picked on by his teacher. I don't think I can stress that enough. These kids are scolded, belittled, all the time by adults. Oftentimes, they have a hard time making friends or keeping friends because of their behaviors. They don't hear a whole lot of positive. Neither does their parent. I went through a few years where a parent, another adult would say to me, oh, you're Ben's mother. And I would cringe. I would know whatever they were going to say, yes, Ben had really done it. Now it's like, oh, you're Ben's mother. You must be so proud. But there was a whole lot of time in there where you really didn't want to talk to another parent because I knew that Ben bounced off the walls, and it was very difficult for him to learn to bring his behaviors under control. That child hears all the time. Usually he hears his name attached to, stop it, sit down, be quiet, don't do that. He doesn't hear the good stuff. Go out of the way to bless the child. Look for, I know he's driving you crazy. And honestly, as I'm saying this to you, I'm thinking about my 4 little guys that I had to talk to last night who really do drive me crazy. I'm tired at the end of the night. But I don't want to go home knowing that I have added more of a burden to that little guy. I want to go home knowing that I built him up a little bit, that he knows I'm on his side, that I'm there to help him, that I'm not there to complain. Even if I have to tell a parent about a behavior because it was to the point where it could have been dangerous. So in this case, it depends on the situation. Most times I don't say anything to the parent. I don't say a word. I just let it go and I deal with it. But if the child has been given, if the child, I've got one who's has very little impulse control, especially in game time, he might have to sit out because he would shove a child. I let the parent know this is why he was sitting out, and the parent understands. And the parents want to know when that's happened. And the kid knows he sits out 1 round, and as long as he's got it back under control, he can go back and play again. But he knows that I'm on his side and that I really care about him. So be positive, establish a relationship with the kid. How many of you get to see these kids at church sometime other than Awana? I mean, I see my kids all the time at church because I'm there on the weekend as well as on Wednesday night. And just that, giving them a high five or remembering something that they had done or a game they had coming up or a swim meet or a gymnastics meet or whatever, and making that comment and saying something to the parent about, gosh, yeah, I missed Eddie when he wasn't here last week. Make sure you bring him this Wednesday. Just not the same without him around, and meaning it, not in a bad way, in a good way. Give some appropriate supervision to clubbers with the ADHD. With those who have difficulty with impulse control, you don't want another child to be hurt. And if the child is shoving or pushing, you need to assign someone to not necessarily be a one-on-one, but to pay particular attention to that child. That adult might be watching 4 other kids too, but eyeballs are mainly on that one who struggles with the impulse control to make sure that nobody else gets hurt. And they don't do it on purpose. They really aren't pushing and shoving because they want to hurt somebody. It's because they want to be first. They're not even thinking as they're running around the game circle and shoving somebody out of the way. They're not even thinking that it's a shove. They're just thinking, I have to get ahead. Okay, so sticking with them, maybe running around the game circle with them. I've done that. At least Sparkies can't run faster than I can. If I had to run around the circle with a bigger kid, I'd be in trouble. Reduce potential distractions, depending on where you seek the kids, it's for a handbook time, stuff like that. Positive feedback. I mean, even if it's something little, every single night, find something little that you can say that's positive about the child. Make it sincere. They can tell when you're being a phony. Offer the kids choices too. Do you want to do this one or do you want to do this one? Do you want to stand up against the wall or do you want to sit here on this line? Little choices that won't make a big difference, but it gives the child a sense of, okay, I made this choice. I'm in control. I can do it. Does it always work? No. But it's a step that you can try. And again, try to give positive comments to parents. Success in small group time. A quiet place to recite verses. These kids are so easily distracted. Oftentimes it's by other noise, but just as often it can be by visual distraction. They see things out of the corner of their eyes and immediately their attention is drawn to it. It makes it very difficult for them to remember the verses that they're trying to say to you. Free from distractions. Don't have them seated looking out a window or a door because they'll never focus on what you want them to focus on. Give them time to redirect and refocus. That thought that's in their head, they might have to continue it before they can redirect. So give them the benefit of the doubt on that, giving them a few seconds, not the immediate thing, but just give them a chance to take a couple deep breaths and redirect. Again, routines. They provide boundaries. They calm the kids down. It can help prevent anxiety. Kids need boundaries. They're not going to feel comfortable without them. And those routines can be part of it. Doesn't mean club has to be boring because you're doing the same things, but having routines that they can rely on and they know when we always have handbook time first and then we're going to large group time and then we're going to go to game time or whatever your focus is. Those little routines that give them that sense of this is where I am, this is where I belong, it's okay, I can relax here. Positive reinforcement, whether they did a great job saying the verse or helping somebody else, or they were quiet while you were listening to someone else. Positive reinforcement. Sometimes these kids have, well, not just these kids have a hard time memorizing verses sometimes. And try out different ways with the kids to see what will work best for them. A lot of the kids use the songs, the verses put to music to say the verse. And that's really good. But others might need to move. I had one little kid who could not understand, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. He couldn't figure it out. We had this little hallway between a couple of rooms, and we made that our valley. So he got what it was. It was shadows, it was in the dark. So we walked up and down. but he could only recite it to me when he was walking up and down that hallway. So he walked up and down the hallway and he said the verse. It worked for him. Be willing to repeat directions. And honestly, if you give directions to a whole group, the child with ADHD may not hear them. And that's not because they're being bad. They're not deliberately ignoring you. They honestly didn't hear the directions, especially if it's to move on to something new. So be willing to repeat the directions. I've got something about that at the end as well. In large group time, oh my goodness, my kids have had the habit of kindergarten sits in the front. We have not a huge room. It's not really big enough for 33 kids, but we get them all in. This week we decided second grade is sitting in the front row and kindergarten sitting in the back row, because kindergarten's behaving a lot better than second grade is. It's that time of year. If you have the child with, and you know he's going to act up, he's going to have a tough time sitting still, put him next to an adult who's going to love him. We've got a sweet, sweet lady who works in our kids' church on Sunday. She's in her 70s, and she says, I don't do anything, but what she does is sit next to the kids who struggle, those who have a tough time paying attention. She just sits there, and she'll just kind of lean in when they're getting antsy, and she'll say something to them and maybe just touch the shoulder, and they're refocused again. It's something as little as that, and she thinks she's doing nothing. She is a huge blessing because she's loving on those kids. She's not making them feel inadequate or bad. She's making them feel loved. So if you can get a senior citizen in there to make them feel loved, go for it. Give the kid a job to do that allows them some movement. Whether it's putting something away or getting something, you could easily walk to the side of the room and get it yourself. Ask the kid to get it and give it to you. Gives them a chance to get up, do something, and then sit back down again. So we got some of the wiggles out. For younger kids, Cubbies and Sparkies, don't be afraid to use one of those wiggle things. Okay, stand up, let's move around. Jump up and down, clap 3 times, turn around, 1, 2, sit down. They got the antsiness out of them. It's like, okay, everybody, eyeballs on me, let's go. And they're ready to go. They've had a chance to move, and it doesn't point out just one kid. Everybody's had a chance to move around. Doesn't work quite as well with TNT kids. They feel it's a little bit kiddish, but you could try. It could be jumping jacks for them. You can give reminders, a snap of the fingers, something discreet. You can look at the child knows, you make the arrangement, and especially with TNT kids. I'm going to look at you, and boy, they know when you're looking at them. I'm just going to look, or I'm going to walk over by you. If you're trying to teach a lesson, just walk by the kid. Come on, buddy. And that's all it takes. Literally, that can be all that it takes. And then they're back on task, and they haven't been humiliated or called out because they're having a problem. Game time is when everything goes crazy for kids with ADHD because the boundaries are loosened completely. It's not in a classroom. It's not in a smaller group setting. Kids are running around. They're expected to run around. And it can be dangerous at times. The looser structure is challenging for these kids. Make sure proper supervision. Make sure that you've got a good buddy with them. If you have to run around the circle with the kid, run around the circle with the kid. Have a leader assigned who's keeping eyeballs on that child. They don't always have a great sense of direction either. The little guys with the right and left, even some TNTers, don't always have a good sense of right and left. And that's part of the executive functioning issue that's going on. Have the child repeat the directions. And remember, they're going to respond so much better when you care about them, than more about them than about their behavior. Giving directions. Be willing for everybody. Give them a second time. Make sure the directions are clear, one at a time, eye-to-eye contact. If at all possible, that eyeball to eyeball, getting down on the kid's level. Think about that, especially if you're talking to a Sparky and you're a 6-footer and you got this little kid looking up at you, they can be intimidated. And I know these are just some memes that I thought were really cute, because that's when I give directions and it's like, I give the directions and they say, what do you want me to do? I just told you. And that's what I want to say. I just told you. But I have to bite my tongue and not say that and say, okay, listen, I'm going to try it one more time. Here's the first one. What do I want you to do? Have them repeat it back. Okay? Because from the kid's perspective, our frustration can sound like this or this. Even if we haven't raised our voices, but we're speaking firmly, that's what they're hearing. You're yelling at me. And that's the reaction we're getting. The tears, the frustration. And when the frustration builds like that in the child, it's sadder than when it builds in us. I think I am at the end. Anything I didn't touch on that you want me to touch on? I know we've gone over.
Nancy, thank you. We do have some, if we want to take just a couple questions, if anybody has a question on maybe something that Nancy talked about or something that's kind of come up that you want to just ask her, we can take a few minutes to do that as we wrap up our time here. So anybody, you can just unmute. I'm just going to unmute all and
There's something that I do with, I do it in Awana. I also do it when I teach children's church. And then it also works for even a big group, like when I have all the kids in for VBS. I'll say, God is good. And the kids are to respond all the time. And then they know as soon as they say all the time, everybody gets quiet and gets focused on me and to be ready to listen. They know to stop moving and everything. And it works really good. And it works, my teens even know to do that now. So as soon as I say God is good, they say all the time, and then they get quiet and ready to listen. So that helps.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The kids like it. Even the adults will use it.
Nancy, I've posted your email
Okay.
on the chat. So if there are any other questions you have, Nancy, I know you'd be happy to answer any additional questions that may come your way if they have those. Also, for everyone that signed up, registered, I will be sending you a video recording of our session with Nancy this evening. And Nancy, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is it okay if I also forward them the PowerPoint that you used tonight?
Yes, please do. I was going to suggest that. Okay. That way they can have it.
Yes. Thank you so much. And
you're welcome.
So Nancy, I so appreciate your willingness to share your experience with us, and it's such great information. I know this has been a great help to many of us who want to do the best job we can working with these precious children that he gives us each and every week. So thank you so much. Again, Nancy's email is there on the chat. Feel free to email Nancy if there's any additional questions that you have, and I'm sure she'd be happy to help you. And with that, Nancy, thank you so much. Everyone, thank you for attending. We pray that you just have a great end of year Awana year. Just a reminder, if you want to put it on your schedule, our next webinar is going to be March 5th at 7:30. Still working on the topic, and once we have that nailed down, we'll send that to you and we'll post it on the Kentucky and Ohio Facebook pages. And we hope we'll see you again in March. So thank you again, and have a great night. We'll see you later.